Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Ooh, I got teary-eyed when I was listening to the reading from Bill. That was just beautiful. That's why we're here. I was thinking the other day, you know, some 48 years ago when I was a senior in high school, I fell in love. And then about 23 years after that, I was trying to figure out how our family could live in a tent. The kids and I were going to try, that was, you know, when I said, okay, what's the worst that could happen? Well, the kids and I will go live in a tent. You know, and here I am 25 years after that in a room filled with more love and support than I could ever imagine. That's my miracle. That's my miracle, and it all happened because I just fell in love with somebody that liked to drink a lot and kind of started the progression going. But I am in awe of all of you and this celebration of recovery because that's what we're doing here this weekend. And I have been treated just beautifully. I want to thank Surly for inviting me. I want to thank the Carrolls for taking such good care of me, the Pats that I'm reuniting with again, Dave that I get to see, and Walt. I mean, it's just, and I live in Texas, and you know, y'all are probably coming there in a couple of weeks, right, for the International. Well, you're going to probably drive by my house. You can stop if you want to. Granite Shoals is a little town of about 2,000 people. Well, we probably have 5 now, but when I moved there, it was 2,000 people. And it's about an hour and a half west of Austin and an hour and a half north of San Antonio. And so I'm in the hill country. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of Texas, and I'm thrilled to be there. But you know what? For me today, to be able to share with you what happened is just a miracle for me. And I want to start by telling you that my name is Stephanie Butler, and I am a grateful member of Al-Anon. Hi, everybody. And I do want to thank Nick for picking me up at the airport, and then the gals who have taken such good care of me. This basket that in my room is almost taller than I am, filled with so many goodies. I'm leaving my clothes behind so that I can pack all the goodies. You know, you can replace the clothes, but all that love that's in that basket, oh my gosh, they have some peach salsa. So I'm really looking forward to sharing some of that. So I want to thank you, and thank you, Carol, for being such a beautiful, loving friend to me all these years. So our literature suggests that I share with you how sick I got. Don't laugh, you haven't even heard the story yet. How well I am, that's where you ought to laugh. And what helped me to get well, with the emphasis being on what helped me to get well, and that's what I'm going to try to do this afternoon. I was born the oldest of 3 into a Catholic Italian family. Now that's how sick I got. But there's one more little piece of the puzzle that you need to know. I was born on Christmas Eve, December the 24th, yes, me and Jesus. And I came first. So I always assumed that the celebration was for me. I told somebody one time the most egotistical person I'd ever met was my husband. And then I kept saying, me and Jesus, me and Jesus. And I thought, oh my gosh, can't say that about him anymore. And I turned 65 this last Christmas Eve, and I am just thrilled to be sucking air. I just think, you know, I really am grateful. I am grateful for the experiences that I have had to get me to this place today. So the oldest of 3 into a Catholic Italian family, and I was born in Midland, Texas. Shortly after I was born, we moved to San Antonio, and that's where I grew up. And I would, when I was doing my 4-step, I wanted to go back and see how in the world did I get to be as I am and married to this man. I don't know how I got there. I would have told you I came from the most loving, nurturing family ever. So I started doing some inventory. And these are some of the things that I found out. My daddy's a workaholic, and he held down 3 jobs to try to support our family. My mother was one of 8 children raised on a dirt farm outside of Fort Worth, Texas. And we would say that her siblings had a little drinking problem, and that her daddy was a bootlegger. And so, in my opinion, my mother was raised by an untreated Al-Anon. Now, what you hear people say all the time when you see some bizarre behavior, she must be an Al-Anon. Well, you are an Al-Anon if you go to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps, and read the literature. You're an untreated Al-Anon if you just kind of hang out with alcoholics and it gets all over you. And so I do believe that my mama was and is today an untreated Al-Anon, and that's the home that I was raised in. My parents were social drinkers. They were not alcoholics. They would have a party every few months, and they'd bring out and they'd have some cocktails, and that was it. So I didn't quite understand how I got to be the way I was and fall in love with an alcoholic, except that there were some beliefs in my home. One of them was, if you do good, you will get good. And if you do bad, you better hold on. And so I grew up afraid of being punished and going to hell. I don't know if my parents taught me that, if the church taught me that, or if I just came up with it in my little brain. But I wanted to never make a mistake. I was so afraid. I also looked at all of you, and you looked so put together, and I felt so less than. So I had been comparing myself, my insides with your outsides from the get-go. The other thing I know was that in our family growing up, we were always fine. How are you? We are fine. Thank you very much. Oh, and you're fine. We are fine. We are fine. My mother had a sign in the front yard that said, "We are fine. Thank you very much." There's a movie that came out recently that said, I think the title of it was Everybody's Fine. And I thought, oh my God, I can't go see it. I bet it's going to be about my home. But none of my feelings were ever expressed, validated, ever. We were always fine. Nobody was ever angry or sad or lonely or scared. We were fine. That's how we were forever growing up. And I saw my mama get mad at my daddy one time in the 18 years that I lived at home. She started crying. She walked out, slammed the door, got in the car, and drove off. The message that I got was, when you make somebody angry, they leave. So I even became afraid of anger. My people-pleasing was put in place at a very early age. I will do anything to keep you from getting angry and get you, because I don't want you to leave. I'm scared to death that you're going to leave. So I am, at a very early age, living my life scared to death. Can't make a mistake, got to make you happy, don't want anybody to leave, we're fine, thank you very much. And that was how I lived all the time. Now, I didn't know any of this until I got into Al-Anon. When I was in college, I told everybody I came from the happiest home, that everybody was loving, and we all sat down together and had a great time. Well, we did. We sat down for dinner every night, and my daddy talked, and we listened. And after 29 years of marriage, my parents divorced, and I was shocked. My denial, all that stuff. So anyway, I'm a senior in high school, and I do fall in love with this man. His name is Bill. We date for 4.5 years, and we decide to get married. Shortly after we were married in San Antonio, we moved to Austin, and that's where I spent the next 25 years of my life. And I'm telling you, I was just the happiest thing ever. I found a man that I loved. I was a school teacher, which is what I wanted to do. So I'm teaching school, and we're starting our life together. Now, at this time, Bill's not drinking very much, although he would travel for his company. And he would call me and say, "We just had the best happy hour. I'll tell you, we're just having a good time." Or he'd get off the airplane, and he'd say, "They're serving free drinks on the plane now?" He said, I'm telling you, I'm really enjoying this. And I'm starting to watch the beers show up in the refrigerator. And he'd say, well, I mowed the lawn, it's really hot, I think I'll have a couple of beers. Now, I hadn't seen this, so I'm paying attention, and I'm keeping track, and I'm counting. And we've been married about 2 years, and I'm counting, and I'm watching because I'm kind of concerned. I don't know what this is about. And so after we had been married for 3 years, I became pregnant. And the only thing that I wanted to do besides teach school, more than anything, was to be a mommy. So now I need to tell you a little story. I'm 8 months pregnant. It is the summer of 1969, and we have been invited back to San Antonio for my Catholic Italian cousin's wedding. And so we go, and it's just beautiful. It's a Saturday morning, and the church is filled with flowers and music, and all the Italians are there, and we're having such a good time. And we go to the reception, and the champagne is flowing, and everybody's just happy, 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 happy. It's just beautiful. And then my cousin and his bride are going to fly to Hawaii for their honeymoon. So we leave the reception and go to the airport. While we are at the airport, I have several people coming up to me saying, your husband is the funniest thing. I have really enjoyed visiting with Bill. And I'm going, okay. And then somebody else would come up and say, Bill has just kept us in stitches. He is the funniest guy. Now, I think Bill's probably the funniest man I ever met, but he was raised by a single mom as an only child. And when you put him into these big Catholic Italian gatherings, he was not a happy camper. So I'm thinking, well, maybe he's getting with the program. This is good. Then a few minutes later, Bill comes up and he whispers in my ear, and he says, Steph, I'll be back in just a minute. I said, okay. So he leaves, and we wave goodbye to the newlyweds, and they leave, and we're getting ready to leave the airport, and we can't find Bill. We have him paged. We go up and down the ramps. We go out to the car. We don't have any idea where he is. My brother-in-law comes, and he says, I found him. And I said, you did? And he said, yeah. And I said, where is he? And he said, he's passed out in the men's room. I said, oh, my goodness. So we had to get an airport attendant to take the door off the hinges, and we needed to get a wheelchair. And I needed to zip up his britches and buckle them and everything, and then we kind of put him in that wheelchair. And so my brother-in-law says, would you like for me to push the wheelchair? And I said, no, I'll do it. He's my husband. And so I'm pushing the wheelchair. Butler's sliding out. We're shoving him back in again, and we're walking down the ramps. My mother is walking beside me, and she is saying, I cannot believe my son-in-law is drunk. I said, oh, Mama, don't say that. Bless his little heart. If you ever hear me say, bless his little heart, I'm having an Al-Anon slip. I said, Mama, he is not drunk. He's sick. Bless his little heart. Mama, my mother said, Stephanie, he's drunk. I said, Mama, he's not drunk. Stop saying that. He's just sick. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is because 19 years later, I went to a psychiatrist's office, and I said, do you think he could have a brain tumor? I said, I'm pretty sure he's got a brain tumor. Let's operate on that sucker, pull it out, and let us get on with the rest of our lives. He is not drunk. He is just sick. Bless his little heart. That denial was put in place back there on that hot July of '69, and it lasted for a very long time. Denial's pretty powerful, and I cannot tell you how many times I said those words. He's not drunk. He's just sick. So in August of 1969, a beautiful little baby girl was born. Her name is Laura Janice. And I am so thrilled to have a baby. I get to be a mommy. And 21 months later, our son, Wes, is born. And now this is a perfect family. I have a healthy daughter and son, thank you, God. I get to be a stay-at-home mom. And I'm just as happy as I can be. Well, okay, almost. I'm watching the drinks kind of increase with Bill. He's drinking more, and I'm counting more, and I want everybody to look good, because you do understand that I took that sign from my parents' front yard and I put it in my front yard. We are fine, thank you very much. And so the kids are out there doing their thing, and like Michael said last night, I needed more balls in the air, so I became PTA president. I was a Girl Scout leader. I built a playscape. I just did everything I could to get my insides filled by the outside. That's exactly, I was still looking at you, and you looked so good, and I felt less than. And so the kids are, they're growing up and they're doing their things, soccer and all that kind of stuff, and Bill's drinking more and he's busy, and I just needed something to do to, stay busy so we'd look good. That's what I wanted us to do. I wanted us to look good. And I believed that if you love somebody, you spent time with them. So my idea of love was enmeshment. And if Bill Butler went hunting, we all went hunting. And if Bill Butler went fishing, we all went fishing. And if he went bowling, we all went bowling. Now, he would tell you that that's the reason he drank so much, but I would like to tell you that my daughter can skin a deer faster than anybody you ever saw. But that's what our life was. We were enmeshed, and I was trying to hold it all together and keep us all together and make us look good. It was really important to look good. So I need to tell you a little story because, in the process of trying to keep all those balls in the air and my daughter, bless her heart, that's not an Al-Anon slip. I am praying when I say bless her heart. She will tell you that she was born angry. She was born angry. And she said she was fine till Wes was born. She said he spoiled everything. She loved being an only child. And she was for 21 months, but after that. So Laura's angry, and I'm trying to get her to behave and follow all the rules. And so Wes is doing his thing, and Bill's drinking more, but he's going to work all the time, and I'm trying to get us to look good. And in the process, we have a border collie. Oh my gosh, love this dog. Her name is Flopsy. Well, Flopsy gets pregnant, and we're about to have border collie puppies. Now, we've never seen this before at our home, so I decided that I wanted her to look good for delivery day. Had nothing else to do, so I shampooed the dog. And then I remembered that sometimes dogs run free and dry, and sometimes you towel dry them, and I wanted to do it right. So I got the bottle of shampoo, and I read on it, and it said, "Do not use on pregnant dogs." And I went, oh my gosh. I have killed this litter of puppies. So I called Dr. Piggott, he's our vet, and I said, Dr. Piggott, you will not believe what I just did. And he says, well, it's about 2 weeks till the puppies are born. Let's wait and see what happens. And I said, okay. And sure enough, about 2 weeks later, the first puppy was born, and it was born dead. And I called Dr. Piggott, and I said, look what I did. I have killed this litter. And he said, no, there's more puppies. Let's wait. Sure enough, about an hour later, another puppy was born, and it was okay. So I called Dr. Piggott, and I said, Dr. Piggott, I didn't kill them all. We have a healthy puppy. And he said, that's great. And about an hour later, another puppy was born, and it was okay. So I called Dr. Piggott. And I said, Dr. Piggott, it's really okay because now we've got 2. And he said, that's really good, Stephanie. And then about an hour later, another puppy was born, and it was okay. So I called Dr. Piggott. And I said, Dr. Piggott, we're okay now because now I've got 3. I think we're going on 4. And he's doing fine. So to make my story a little bit shorter, throughout that day, Flopsy had 7 puppies. I called Dr. Piggott after every puppy. The last puppy was born, and it was a little tiny thing, and it had trouble breathing. Dr. Piggott, what do I do? He said, do you have any alcohol in your home? Yes. He said, then you put a little bit of alcohol on the tip of a teaspoon, put it in the puppy's mouth, and massage it down her throat. And that's going to clear up all that phlegm, and she'll be okay. I said, okay, I think I can do that. And he said, and then, Stephanie, I want you to sit down and drink the rest of that bottle. That's a true story, and I want you to know that if I could have, I would have. I was so tired. I'm telling you, it's very hard being married to an alcoholic and to have a daughter who decides not to follow any of the rules, and then to have a son who's just like his mama trying to get his insides filled by the outside, so he's doing all these sports. It's just plain exhausting. In fact, I'll tell you what I believe to be true today. I think when you walk in the doors of Al-Anon, there needs to be one question that they ask you. Are you tired? if you're not tired, you probably don't want to come sit in our meetings. But if you're tired, we've got a chair for you. I'm telling you, I was so tired, and I was trying to do everything the best I could. I wanted us to look good. I'm trying to do everything. And I had gone back to teaching because these kids weren't filling me up anymore. And, and Bill couldn't take care of me and fill me up, so I went back to teaching. And so now I'm teaching in this private school, and I get part of my insides filled up by the teaching, and I'm watching all these children. And, everything's going along pretty good. And there's just our daughter, bless her heart. She is beautiful. She's in high school. She's beautiful when you look at her from the front. But if she turns sideways, she has a very protruding chin. So what they had to do was to go in and break her jawbone and then scoot that back and then wire her mouth shut. I love that part. So she was angry. What can I tell you? She was just born angry. She'll tell you. So we are in the hospital. Laura and I are there, and she's getting ready to go in for this major surgery. And I had my first moment of clarity because it was only Laura and myself. And I went, "Where's Bill?" He's passed out. And I thought, I am doing this marriage and this family all by myself. And I started to pay attention. I was watching. I started counting. I started thinking about what was going on with this man that I loved so much. He had puffed up like a little toad. He really, I think vodka can kind of just get into your skin or something, because he wasn't fat. He was just puffy. And he was also coming home saying, "What's for dinner?" And I would tell him, and then 5 minutes later he'd say, "What's for dinner?" And that's when I thought he had the brain tumor. But I couldn't, I was trying to figure out what was going on with him, and I was trying to get the kids to be good. And, I was crying. This is what I do so well. I cannot tell you how I feel, but I cry. I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I'm sad. I cry when I'm scared. I cry when I'm angry. That's what I do, and I do it really, really well. And so that's what I was doing all the time, was just crying. And we knew the family didn't look good. So we took Laura to a psychologist because she's standing on our roof, and I've got the sign. I have got the sign in the front yard, and she's standing there going, "These people are crazy. Somebody come do something." She really made me mad. So we decided that we're going to go fix her. So we take her to a psychologist. And so it's Bill and myself and Laura, and we're sitting there, and he decides he wants to meet with each one of us individually. And after he does, he brings all of us back in. And he said, "I need to tell you that of the three of you, your daughter is the healthiest." Now, Laura, she's going, "Yes," Bill didn't want to pay the bill. I was crying. How could that be? And this doctor looked at us, and he looked at Bill, and he said, "I think you're drinking too much." And he looked at me, and he said, "All you ever do is cry." And he said, "Now, your daughter is expressing her feelings. She's doing it inappropriately, but you know how Laura feels." So we decided to not pay attention to him anymore. And so I'm still trying to keep it all together. And it is the summer of 1985. And I am watching Bill, and I am crying, and I am tired, and I can't get Laura to behave, and I can't possibly be out there and support Wes all the time because I'm just too tired. And I knew what the problem was. I looked at Bill, and I said, "You are drinking too much, and I love you too much, and I cannot watch you kill yourself with alcohol. You have to leave, or you have to get sober." And you can imagine what he said. "I'm not leaving." Or, "If you had to live with you, you'd drink too." He was mad. He was mad. And I was done. That's when I thought we were going to go live in a tent. Because on my teacher's salary, I didn't think I could support our family. But I could not watch him die. I loved him too much. And so he moved out. And the next day, one of his friends called, and his name's Jerry. And Jerry said, "Stephanie, I understand you kicked Butler out." And I said, "He's drinking too much. I think he's dying." And he said, well, I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'd like to take you to a meeting. Will you go with me? And at that point in my life, I would have gone anywhere and done anything. Yes. What do you want me to do? So Jerry picked me up and took me to my first Al-Anon meeting on July the 24th of 1985. I sat in that meeting and I cried. And I cried and I cried. Y'all were so patient. You said, what's your name? And I went, my. And y'all said, just keep coming back. I went every other day. What's your name? That's okay, just keep coming back. I don't remember anything that you said at that very first meeting, but after a couple of them, I heard something that I thought was going to break my heart. And you said, first of all, you told me something I had no idea. You told me that alcoholism was a disease. I did not know that. I thought Bill Butler could choose to not drink. And every day I judged him and found him lacking. I didn't know it was a disease. And then you told me it was a family disease. And you told me that if you raise children in an alcoholic home, you have raised sick kids. That's when I thought my heart would break. And then you said you did the very best you could with the knowledge that you had at the time. And I'm just crying. I had no idea those pieces of information, they were not part of who I was. So I'm going to meetings and I'm crying and y'all are hugging me. And 2 weeks later, I get a call from Bill. And he said, Steph, I've been out at Willie's and I've been trying to sober myself up and I can't do it. I need some help. So on August the 6th, Bill began his spiritual journey. Now, I would have told you that all I wanted was for that man to get sober and we would live happily ever after. That's the funniest thing I'm going to tell you today. It was important for Bill to find sobriety, and I'm so grateful he did. But when I went to those Al-Anon meetings, you said, take the focus off of him and put it on yourself. And I said, you got it. It's about time somebody listened. I've got things to tell you. I was, in our preamble it says, it's understanding ourselves. Some of us are smug and self-righteous. And every time I read that in an Al-Anon meeting, I choke. That would have been me, smug and self-righteous. But y'all told me to get a sponsor, and you told me to go to meetings. Oh, I got me a sponsor. Her name's Blanche. I did not know that Blanche had been in Al-Anon over 20 years when I asked her to be my sponsor. But I loved her. And I'm telling you, that woman, I don't think anybody understands the gift of sponsorship. I don't think you do. I don't think I did. I was just so grateful to have somebody listen to me. And she would have me go to her house, and I would sit on her couch every week for 1 hour until we were through with the 9th step. That's how Blanche did this deal. And so the first out, I'd get on her couch and I would start talking. 5 minutes after it was almost time for us to close, she would say, would you like any feedback? No. I just want you to listen to me. And I was ready to write my life story for my 4th step because I wanted to tell you how good I had been and how bad they had been. And Blanche wouldn't let me. And so, but we were meeting all the time. You know what Blanche did? She's the very first person ever in my life that touched my face and said, it's okay to be who you are and feel the way you feel. She's the first person to ever validate my feelings. And as we sat there, she said to me, we're going to have to change your concept of a higher power. You have a God that you are afraid of, and that's just not true. God cannot do bad. He cannot. Goes against everything. God loves you no matter what, and you can't earn it. It's free. And every time we would sit together, she would remind me, God loves you. He can't do bad. He loves you. So I'm working the steps with Blanche, and I love her. And Bill's working his steps with his sponsor, Lon, and we're just having a wonderful, it's like, the life I dreamed we would have. But you know what? I could not stop crying in the meetings. And one time I went to Blanche and said, Blanche, Bill's sober, I've got you, we're doing okay. Why don't I quit crying? I'm crying every time I sit in a meeting. And she said, because you are grieving the loss of a dream. You never intended for your family to be held in the grips of alcoholism, and you're grieving the loss of a dream. And she gave me permission to cry. And I continue today to cry. Now, everybody is so happy with this sobriety and with us going to meetings and recovery in our family, except for one person, Laura. She did not like a drinking daddy, but let me tell you how much she did not like a sober daddy. He was present and he was paying attention. So we started holding Laura accountable. And so she was a senior in high school. She had done something, broken some rules, I don't remember what, and we had her grounded. And after she had been grounded for a week, she came in and she said, the University of Texas is playing ball. Can I please go see the game? It's a Sunday afternoon. Bill and I talked about it. We said, yeah, you can go. Just be home by 6 o'clock. She said, I'll be here. 6 o'clock Sunday night came and Laura didn't come home. Monday morning, Laura wasn't home. Monday afternoon, Laura wasn't home. She's a senior in high school, and she's got 3 months till graduation. Now, I believe that it is God's will for everybody to graduate from high school. I'm pretty positive that it is. And so I want to find her and get her back in school. And we need to just get her out of there, and then we're done. We're just done, you know. So I don't know what to do. And I'm going to the meetings. And you know what y'all are saying to me? Oh, don't you love it? Well, what would you be doing if this weren't happening? It is happening, and I need help. I want to know, do I call the cops? What do I do? This is terrible. But if this weren't happening, what would you be doing? I would be washing dishes. Good. Go home and wash some dishes. You know, and I would just, no matter what I said to you, you said, but what would you be doing? And I would call Blanche, and Blanche would say, you know, God loves Laura more than you do. And I would say, I don't know if he can. I mean, she said, don't limit. He loves her. She's got a higher power just like you do. So on Wednesday of that week, Laura still wasn't home. And I'm going to school, and I'm teaching school, and when I get ready to leave school that afternoon, I get in my car, and I have another moment of clarity. And what it says to me is, if what you're doing isn't working, try something different. And I said, I am trying to love Laura well. It's not working. And Friday of that week, the phone rings, and it's Laura. Hi, Mom, how are you doing? Listen, I'm going to be a little bit late coming home today. As if nothing had happened. She said, if you'll put in this video for me and tape this show, because I really want to see it. And I said, Laura, I love you, and you can't come home. And she said, what? And I said, I love you, and you can't come home. Well, her anger just exploded. And I listened to it for a couple of minutes, and then I said, I love you, and I hung up. And I was so calm and peaceful. And about that time, Bill walked in, and he said, are you okay? And I said, well, I just talked to Laura. And he said, well, thank God, where is she? I said, I don't know, because I told her she couldn't come home. And he said, Stephanie, do you think that was a good idea? He hadn't been to any Al-Anon meetings. I said, I don't know, but I think that's just what I said. And I was so calm. Well, you know that moment of clarity where God does for you what you cannot do for yourself? Lasted 1 moment. In the middle of the night, I'm going, oh no, what have I done? We've got to go find her. Hurry up, get up. We got to get in the car. And I went to my Al-Anon meeting that Saturday morning, and I said, oh my God, I told her she couldn't come home. Why would I do such a thing? And one of the gals came up and patted my hand and said, did you know you could have a good day anyway? Don't think so. Having a bad time of it. Calling Blanche. Blanche says, pray. I'm saying, I don't know I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, Laura was gone. We did not know where she was. We couldn't talk to her. So Bill decided that he wanted to get her into a treatment center for teenagers with behavior problems. And so he found one in Denton, Texas. And so he called them, and he said, I've got this teenager, and, when we find her, can you take her? And they said, yeah, well, So then I said, well, I found out that after Laura had been gone for about a month that she was over at Cherie's house. So I called, and I asked Blanche. I said, Blanche, can I call Laura and let her know that we found this place? And Blanche said, yeah, just be careful what you say. So I called, and I said, Laura, your daddy's found a place that we can take you if you'd like some help. And she said, what do I have to do? And we said, well, we'll come pick you up in the morning. Fine. Laura's favorite word was whatever. You know how now I say whatever, like, God, whatever you want. But Laura's was whatever, and rolling those eyes, So that Monday morning, Bill and I went and picked her up, and we took her to Denton. And I'll tell you, I cried the whole way. My daughter had been living on the streets. She was sleeping under benches, park benches. She had gotten beat up in pool halls. She looked horrible. I cried all the way to Denton. I could not believe that this was our daughter. So we let her out and drove home, and the only thing I was grateful for was that I knew where she was, and I knew she was safe. And that the way she looked broke my heart. Well, 2 days later, the phone rings, and it's Laura. Hey, Mom. Yes. I need to ask you a question, okay? How would you feel about me being an alcoholic? And I said, Laura, any 12-step program you want to latch onto will be just fine with me. She said, we've been inventorying my drinking, Mom. I've got a drinking problem. I'm an alcoholic. And this past April the 6th, Laura celebrated 23 years of sobriety. Oh, my gosh. I was so grateful. And then we went for Family Week. Don't you just love them? Sit there, tell me how you feel. How do you feel? Well, during Family Week, Laura got so angry she threw a chair against the wall. And so her counselor came up and said, I don't think she's ready to go home yet. No kidding. And so he suggested that she go to a halfway house in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we took Laura to a halfway house in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And she was there for 4.5 months. Now, let me tell you, what I wanted was for Laura to graduate from high school. What God wanted was for Laura to graduate by correspondence and to get a 12-step program to live the rest of her life by. I would have cut it short because I could only see that one little piece of the puzzle. So now Laura comes back after the 4.5 months, and she's got a job, and we're going to open meetings, and I'm crying because I have a sober daughter and a sober husband, and I'm just so happy. And Wes is a senior in high school, and I'm praying that history does not repeat itself. And Wes is a senior, and he's about to graduate, but he's also playing football, and he's out there doing those two-a-days. And he's working so hard, but during the two-a-days, Wes got really, really sick. And he ended up in the hospital with viral meningitis. He had 104 temperature for 7 days. And I called Blanche, and I said, now, Blanche, this God that you have told me loves me no matter what, why would he do that to this boy? Wes has never hurt anybody. He's loving, and he's kind, and he's good. And she said, Stephanie, God didn't do this. Wes got a virus. God will sustain you no matter what happens. Well, and I wasn't alone in that hospital room this time. Bill and I cried together and prayed together, and the AAs and the Al-Anons were there with us. And we asked Dr. Ream, Wes is going to be okay, isn't he? Dr. Ream said, I can't promise you anything. But Wes did survive that illness. And I'm so grateful. And he graduated on time. Thank you, God. We got to have our Kodak moment. And, he did it like he was supposed to. He followed the rules. And I was so grateful. So now he's getting ready to start at the University of Texas. And he's going there. And Bill comes home one day and he said, Stephanie, how would you like to move to Reston, Virginia? And I said, why would we do that? And he said, well, I've been traveling a lot during our married life, and I'm getting tired of being on airplanes. What do you think about moving to Reston? I said, let's go. I said, I think it'll be wonderful. And I was lying. I did not want to go. I would tell anybody that listened, but I knew we weren't going anywhere because houses in Austin, Texas in 1990 weren't selling. A house down the street had been on the market for 2 years. We weren't going anywhere. 2 weeks. Our house sold in 2 weeks. So the AAs are coming and the Al-Anons are there and everybody's helping us clean up and pack up and all this sort of stuff, and I'm just sitting in the middle of the floor crying. And Tom, one of our dear friends, came up and he said, what is the matter with you? And I said, I don't think I can go. I said, I love Bill and I'll go anywhere with him, but I don't think I can go. I can't leave my kids, and I can't leave my sponsor, and I can't leave my gynecologist, and I can't leave my hairdresser. Tom wrapped his arms around me and he said, Stephanie, you know what you have in Austin, Texas. Why don't you go see what they have in Reston, Virginia? And you know what? They have Al-Anon in Reston, Virginia. They don't do it right, but they have Al-Anon in Reston, Virginia. I called Blanche. I said, Blanche, you just won't believe this meeting I sat in. And she said, why? And I said, I don't think they even mentioned higher power one time. And I said, nobody mentioned the steps. And she said, well, what did you do? And I said, I told them how we're doing it in Texas. And she said, well, you might want to stop that. And I did, and the meetings got really good. So we are like on a second honeymoon. The kids are in Austin. Wes is a freshman at the university. Laura's got a job. Bill's got a job. I'm teaching. We're just having the best time. The kids call. We say, yes, we love you. Goodbye. You know, it was just wonderful. We had opened our door. We were having a big book study in our house every Wednesday night. I mean, we just hooked on to that community. That's one of the most powerful things that I know of, is that this fellowship is anywhere you go. And we immediately had a family that held us and supported us. So we're just having the best time. And then the phone rings and it's Laura. And she says, Mom, guess what? And I said, what? And she said, I found your son passed out. And I said, what happened? She said, Mama, he was drunk. I said, no. I said, he saw your daddy nearly die of alcoholism. He saw you lose your home for alcoholism. Wesley's not going to take a drink. Mom, I took Wes to his first AA meeting today. And on January the 10th of 1991, Wesley began his spiritual journey.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
Oh my gosh, we are a family in recovery. Most amazing thing, I was just so grateful, and we'd come home, fly home from Reston to Austin, and we'd all stand in these open meetings and hold hands, and we all said the Lord's Prayer, and I was crying, and it was beautiful, and I was so grateful. And then about a few months later, Laura calls, and she says, Mom, guess what? And I said, what? And she said, I'm pregnant. I said, no, you're not. She said, Mom, I'm going to have a baby. And I said, no, Laura, you're not going to have a baby. She said, Mom, I said, Laura, honey, first you have the wedding, then you have the baby. We didn't have a wedding. You're not going to have a baby. She said, Mom, I am pregnant. She said, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to have an abortion? I said, no. She said, do you want me to give it up for adoption? I said, no. She said, what do you want? And I said, I want for you to not be pregnant. Blanche said I was opting for one of my unavailable choices. She said I did that a lot. Well, what a reflection on me and my parenting, and on AA. She had been sober 5 years. My gosh, come on. And she had been dating this guy for all this time, but they weren't going to get married. They didn't want to be parents. I mean, they didn't want this. And so I'm just beside myself, and I'm ashamed because that shouldn't be happening. She should have the wedding first. So I didn't tell anybody in Virginia. I kept it a secret. And so one night after our big book study meeting, Rita and George were getting ready to leave, and I said, Rita, you need to stay here for a minute. I need to tell you something. She said, what? And I said, it's really bad. It's really bad. She said, what? I said, Laura's going to have a baby. She went, oh. And I said, no, it's bad. It's bad. She said, why would you say that? And I said, because she's not married. It's really bad. And she said, Stephanie, isn't it a shame that you have to label everything? Can't you just say it's what is? It's just what is. On June the 6th of 1992, the most beautiful baby girl you have ever seen was born. Her name is Stephanie Grace. I would have missed it. It didn't look right, the wrappings. Oh my gosh. We were at the hospital and Bill was sober and Wes was sober and I was crying. But I have to tell you the truth. It was the happiest day of my life. I would have missed it. Most beautiful thing. I couldn't wipe the grin off my face for months. I love being a grandma, and I love having baby Grace. Now I need to tell you a couple of stories about Grace. When she was in second grade, the teacher asked all the kids to introduce themselves, and my Grace stands up and she says, my name is Grace, I'm an alcoholic, and I've got 7 years of sobriety. The teacher said, what did you say? And Grace is her mother's daughter, so she put her hands on her hips and she said, you didn't hear what I said? I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober 7 years. That's the only way Grace had ever heard anybody introduce themselves. She had been going to meetings since before she was born. Every time you say your name, you say you're an alcoholic, and you tell time. I mean, it's just what she did. So the teacher called Laura, and Laura said, no, she's not an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. You're an alcoholic. Oh, no, it's okay. I'm sober. I mean, it was just one of those things. So one day, Grace went to the AA club in Austin. It's Northland, and she went up to Gerald, and she said, Gerald, I want to buy a big book. And he said, you do, Grace? And she said, yes. How much do they cost? And Gerald said, well, Grace, how much money do you have? She says, I've got this much. And he says, that's how much a big book cost. And so Gerald sold Grace her first big book. But then that little granddaughter of mine turns around and she says, now I need a sponsor. The miracle of all this is tomorrow, Grace will be 18 years old. 18. I cannot believe it. She's had a pretty rough struggle, but she is still the most precious thing in my life. I adore that little girl. I adore her. Well, she's not a little girl anymore. She said, when I graduated, you're going to call me Princess Grace? And I said, you're my precious Princess Grace. So now I need to tell you, about a year later in 1993, I got a call from San Antonio. And they told me that my daddy had an abdominal aneurysm and that it had ruptured and he had died instantly. And I was devastated. I loved my daddy. And as sad as I was to see him gone, that's how grateful I was that I had worked the 12 steps of Al-Anon AA. I had made amends to my daddy. He knew that I loved him as much as I possibly could, and he loved me as much as he could. I was so grateful at that point. Now I have to tell you the part of my story that I wish I never had to say. You know, I have lots of character defects, but one of my worst ones is wishing the past were different. The one thing you can't change. In February of 1994, with 8.5 years of sobriety, Bill Butler could not live with his humanness, and he committed suicide. Bill had suffered from depression on and off most of his life. And he had taken himself off of his antidepressants because he was feeling so good. And when I went to talk to a psychiatrist about it, he said to me, that was a moment of insanity. If Bill could have lived through that one moment, he would be alive today. I need for you to hear two things from me this afternoon. One of them is AA works. Bill Butler cherished his sobriety. Depression is an illness, and if it goes untreated, it will kill you. The hardest thing I've ever had to do was to call my children. Laura said, Mama, Daddy loved you too much. He would not do that to you. I called Wes, and he says, Mama, Daddy's not going to go off and leave you. He loves you too much. It's not about love. It's about an illness. It took every meeting, every hug, every phone call, and every piece of literature I've ever received to be able to put one foot in front of the other. It's the question you have no answers for. There's no answers for this. The people there in Virginia wanted to have a service for him, and we did. And my teacher friends came, and his work friends came, and y'all were there. And one of my teachers came up to me, and she said, who are all these people? She said, I've lived here 20 years. You've lived here 4. I don't know half this many. And I said, it's my family. Y'all told me when I came into the program that I would never have to do anything alone again. And you stuck by your word. You held my hand for every step I took. We brought him back to Texas, and we buried him in Texas. Had a beautiful graveside service. Jack Clater was just lawn. It was just beautiful. And I needed help. When I left here, Blanche told me that I had to get a sponsor in Virginia. She said, you and I will never quit, but you need somebody that you have eye contact with. And I had a gal. And Bill's suicide was too much for her. She would not even come in my house. She brought a bag of bagels to the door late one night and told whoever answered the door to please give them to me. She just could not do it. And it's okay. It's big and it's scary. But I also knew that I needed to have some professional help, and Blanche said, you get somebody to talk to. And I did. I got a gal named Nancy. And I sat with Nancy, and she said, you need to know something, Stephanie. You have been traumatized. She said, when something happens in your life, and in one instant, it will never be the same again. It's called trauma. Grief is different. Grief is a loss, and it hurts, and it's painful, and there's all kinds. Trauma is when, in one instant, it will never be the same again. And she said, you're going to need some help. And I went to see Nancy 2 and 3 times a week for a whole year. I would try to go to the grocery store, and I would hyperventilate, and I didn't even know what that was. But I would walk in the door and just, and I called Nancy, and she said, it's a symptom of being traumatized. It's okay. Get somebody else to go to the grocery store for you. I am forever grateful to her for the knowledge that she shared with me at that time. I didn't think I could live. Bill and I had been together 33 years. People had said to me, well, you saw it coming, right? No. Bill and I had been out to dinner and to the grocery store the night before. The psychiatrist that I saw said there was a black hole inside of Bill, and it wasn't about you. It had nothing to do with him. The outside, it's about his inside. The kids wanted me to come back home, and I said, no, I've got a job here, and I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to do this job. And the next year, both of my children got married. Laura got married in April of 95, and Wesley got married in August. And I went to my counselor, and I said, I don't understand. Why are these kids getting married now? It feels like another loss. And she said, when your children's age, lose their family unit, they will find it necessary to recreate it as quickly as possible. This will probably be a practice marriage for your children. And it was. It was a practice for both of them. So in 1996, I walked back into my house. It was February, just about 2 years after Bill died. And I walked into the house and I went, he's not coming home. It took 2 years for the information to go from my head to my heart. It was just the realization. I don't know what I thought. I saw him in the casket, but somehow my brain said, oh, he'll walk in. And after 2 years, I understood that that wasn't going to be a possibility. So I called the kids and said, hey, I think I'm coming back to Texas. And they said, oh, good, Mom. Now, what I didn't know about Bill, and he was a very faithful employee. Through the alcoholism and everything, that man very seldom missed work. And so he had been taking money at his job and putting it into a fund, and they were matching it and all this sort of stuff. So there's this lump sum of money that I was given when Bill died. We've never had money. I didn't know what to do with it, didn't want it, didn't care. But when I decided to go back to Texas, I just opened my doors and I sold a couch for $25 and a chair for $5 and said, just come get it because I'm going home. And so I sold everything. One of my teachers said, well, where are you going to go? Are you going back to Austin? I said, oh, no, Austin's gotten way too big. I don't want to go to Austin. And she said, well, where are you going? And I said, you know what? I have never lived in a new house. I would love a new house. And I did not know this about me, but I love the water. I would love to find a house near water. And you know what else? When you're in Virginia, you never get to see a sunset. Those trees are so tall. So I want to go where I get to see a sunset. And it was as if God said, gotcha. And I moved into a brand new house on Lake LBJ, and the sun sets over Pack Saddle Mountain right out my back door. Oh my gosh, it's just beautiful. Now I had to go buy furniture because I'd sold everything, given everything away, and so I called the man in Virginia that I had my money invested with. And I said, Bruce, I'm now in Marble Falls, Granite Shoals. I need for you to please send my money down here so I'll have somebody eye to eye. And he said, will do. Money didn't come. Called him back. Bruce, I need the money down here because I'm ready to, get it invested with somebody that I can see. It's in the mail. The money didn't come. Bruce stole $300,000. All the money that I thought I was going to live on for the rest of my life. I thought that Grace and I were going to travel. I thought we were going to go to AA conventions. I thought it was going to be wonderful. It was like another death in the family. I could not believe it. I am crying. It's horrible. I don't know what to do. Laura would call and she would say, Mom, pray for clear and concise direction. Thanks, Laura. I'm trying. I mean, all I know how to do is to teach school. And I need enough money because Bruce told me not to pay cash for the house. He said, you're going to need a tax write-off. So I had house payments. And I didn't know what I was going to do. You know what God did? Well, first of all, I have to tell you, thank you, AAs. Thank you. I sat in some open AA meetings, and y'all would say to me, you need to pray for Bruce. Pray for Bruce. So every morning, God bless Bruce. Oh, my gosh. I could not understand how that man could put his head on the pillow at night, but he did. I prosecuted. And that's what the district attorney up in Virginia told me to do in Washington, D.C. And she said, we've done a paper trail and your money's all gone. There is no money. And they sent Bruce to prison for 2 years. That was the maximum they could do. And the judge was so nice. She said, I hope you will be able to get on with the rest of your life, Miss Butler. I will. I still do that today. But anyway, so God says to me, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. But how about if I build an elementary school 7 minutes from your house and they're going to need a first grade teacher? God, you would do that for me? And he did. And I got my first paycheck, and I'm telling you, I've never been so happy. And I ripped that sucker open, and guess what? It was not enough to make a house payment. And so God and I had a little talk. And I said, God, it must not be about money. You must want me to teach school, and you're going to take care of the money, because I can't do it. I did the footwork. I did the best I could. I can't do any more. And you know what? I am self-supporting through my own contributions, and I've been just fine. I'm just fine. So when I was in Virginia, and when Bill died, I had been sitting in meetings with this wonderful woman. And when she heard about Bill's death, she called my house, and she said, if you ever need anybody to talk to, I'll be happy to talk with you. And since my Virginia sponsor could not be present for me, I started working with the most beautiful woman. Her name is Dawn. And Dawn and I started working together while I was in Virginia, and I would sit on her couch and cry, and she would hold me and love me, and she so helped me heal. Dawn's very favorite thing to say to me is, Stephanie, are you in present time? And my answer is always no. I'm worried about what I said. I'm worried about what's going to happen. No. So now I moved back to Texas, and so Blanche and I picked back up together again. And so I have been blessed by two beautiful women as sponsors in recovery. So I'm back now, and you know what? I have to tell you something. I am to a place now where Bruce is just Bruce, and Bruce did what he did, and it's just life. It's really sad that he could do that to a widow, but that's what he did. I almost am to the point where I am so grateful, because I am teaching first grade today, and I have had children cross my path that have enriched my life. There's a little girl named Rosie. She has more medical problems than you and I could ever dream of, and she's the happiest little girl I ever saw. And I got to teach Rosie for a whole year, and I wouldn't have missed it. She came in every day, Miss Buller, and she had more reasons to be angry at God than anybody I know. So I'm grateful that I am where I am. Sorry that Bruce robbed me of my choices, because I'm going to be teaching school for a while. But, every year are you retiring? Not quite yet. So even the kids are now asking me, are you still here? So Blanche and I, though, are meeting, and we're having a wonderful time. Now, in the process of all of this, I was driving a little red Oldsmobile. Loved that car. It had 100,000 miles on it, and sometimes it would go and sometimes it wouldn't. And so, I was telling Blanche about it, and so Blanche would say, I'm going to enter sweepstakes for you because you need to get another car. And I said, okay, Blanche, go for it. So she would call and say, can you live with a red Jeep? And I'd go, sure, Blanche, give me a red Jeep, I don't care. Well, after some period of time, in the year 2000, Blanche was in an accident, and she ended up in the hospital in Temple, Texas, which is about an hour and a half from my house. And so I would get in my little red car every Saturday and drive to Temple to see Blanche. And I'd walk in her room, and she'd say, how's your car? And I said, Blanche, we need to get you well. I said, let's just concentrate on getting you well. Well, Blanche was in the hospital for 7 weeks, and she did not survive her injuries. And I got a call from her daughter, and she said, Stephanie, if you want to say goodbye to my mom, you better hurry. And I got in that little red Oldsmobile, and I said, you know what, God, I didn't get to say goodbye to my daddy, and I didn't get to say goodbye to Bill. Please let me say goodbye to Blanche. And I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. And I could say, I hope you can see the lives that you have touched. I hope you know what you have done. What an amazing woman, being willing to share. They had a memorial service for Blanche, and they asked me if I would say a few words. And that morning that I was getting dressed, the phone rang, and it was Laura, and she says, Mama, you are going to tell them how important Blanche was to our family, aren't you? And I said, Laura, you hated Blanche. She said, Mama, she wanted you to hold me accountable. She wanted you to teach me that there are consequences for my choices. She wanted you to not accept unacceptable behavior. If it hadn't been for Blanche, I think I would be dead today. And at Blanche's services, I could share that. A few months later, I get a call from her daughter again, and she said, Stephanie, I don't know if you're going to understand this or not, but I had a visit from my mom last night. Okay. She said she's worried about your transportation. Oh, my God. I wish I'd had the presence of mind to say, could you just tell her to get to a meeting? They're bound to have great ones up there. And I said, oh, Ellen. And she says, you know, my mom wants you to have her car. And I said, oh, I could never take Blanche's car. And she says, well, then you're going to have to argue with my mom and God. Blanche was driving a 99 Cadillac. Had 23,000 miles on it, and it was all paid for. So into this little school, I am parking lot. I'm driving this white, beautiful Cadillac. Every day I'd get in it and I'd just go, thank you, Ellen, thank you, Blanche. I felt so safe and so loved, and I was just so appreciative. You know, I'm cared for. You never know. And I have been loved. Now, this last December, that beautiful Cadillac had 149,000 miles on it. It was at the place where sometimes it went and sometimes it didn't. And so I cried, but I had to let it go. But my goodness, what a gift. You know, what a gift. I am cared for. I am so loved. And now that Blanche is gone, Dawn and I have picked up again. She and I talk 2 and 3 times a week, and I feel loved and cared for. You know, my miracle started because I fell in love with an alcoholic. My life today, Laura is married, and they have Grace. Wes got remarried again, and they gave me a beautiful little granddaughter. She's 4. She will be 4 in July. And that marriage didn't last for Wes. And Wes had a broken back. He had a slip, but he is sober and clean today and has been for almost 3 years now. He was sober for 16 when the pain pills kind of took him, but he's doing good today. And you know what? Because of the program, and because there are people out there that have held my hand and loved me no matter what, it's like Michael said last night, I know how the story ends. I'm going to be just fine. Now, when I'm walking in it, doesn't look so good. I get scared, and you offer a hand. That's what you have done for me for almost 25 years. I am so grateful. My home group is the Monday night ODAT meeting in Marble Falls at 7:30. We're there every Monday night. It started out with maybe 5 or 6, and last Monday we had 22. It is growing, and it is wonderful. And if you're ever in, well, y'all are going to be there for the International. So if you stay over till Monday, I'll take you to a great Al-Anon meeting. And you know what? No matter what, look how I have been loved. I am in Palm Springs, California. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I could be here with you today. And you have loved me and listened to me, and I am grateful. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.